Hey everyone, tonight we're talking about a country most of you couldn't find on a map if your life depended on it, Tajikistan. No, it's not a new dating app, it's a real place nestled in Central Asia, surrounded by mountains so high they'd make Everest feel inadequate. Imagine a landlocked nation, roughly the size of Wisconsin, but instead of cheeseheads you've got snow-capped peaks and valleys dotted with ancient cities. That's Tajikistan in a nutshell. Today, Tajikistan is an independent nation still finding its footing after the whole escaping the clutches of a crumbling empire thing. But hey, who hasn't been there, right? More on that later. Let's rewind a bit, shall we? Back when empires were all the rage and globalization involved camels, not cargo ships, Tajikistan, my friends, was right in the thick of it, smack dab in the middle of the legendary Silk Road. Imagine a highway stretching from China to Europe, buzzing with merchants, adventurers, and probably a few shady characters looking to make a quick buck, or should I say, Durham. This wasn't just about silk though, we're talking spices, precious metals, ideas, religions, basically the ancient world's version of Amazon Prime, but with a lot more sand and a lot less two-day shipping. This prime location turned Tajikistan into a cultural melting pot. It was like the United Nations of its time, except instead of arguing over resolutions, they were haggling over the price of silk and spices. Are still visible in the many beautiful mosques and Islamic traditions that thrive in Tajikistan today. And let's not forget the Mongols, led by the infamous Genghis Khan. Their invasions were swift and brutal, leaving a lasting impact on the region's history and infrastructure. They were like the rowdy neighbors of history, leaving a trail of, let's just say, renovations in their wake. The remnants of Mongol architecture and the stories of their conquests are a stark reminder of their once formidable presence in Tajikistan. Section 4. The Russian Empire says, "You're with us now." Fast forward a few centuries, and the Russian Empire decides it wants in on the Central Asian action. The vast, untamed lands of Central Asia were too tempting for the Russian Empire to ignore. They saw an opportunity to expand their influence and control over this strategically important region. It's the 19th century, the age of imperialism, and everyone's playing capture the colony. European powers were scrambling to carve out their own pieces of the world, and Russia was no exception. They wanted to ensure they weren't left behind in this global game of territorial chess. Naturally, Tajikistan gets caught in the crossfire. This beautiful and rugged land, with its rich culture and history, found itself at the mercy of larger geopolitical forces. The people of Tajikistan had little say in the matter as their homeland became a pawn in the imperialist ambitions of the Russian Empire. After some, shall we say, persuasion, Tajikistan became part of the Russian Empire. The Russian Empire used a combination of military might and diplomatic maneuvering to bring Tajikistan under its control. It wasn't a smooth process, but eventually, the region was absorbed into the empire. Think of it as that awkward family reunion where you're forced to hang out with your distant relatives you never knew you had. The people of Tajikistan suddenly found themselves part of a vast empire with new rulers and new customs to adapt to. It was a period of significant change and adjustment. Except in this case, the distant relatives are imposing new rules, languages, and a bureaucracy that would make Kafka proud. The Russian authorities introduced their own systems of governance, education, and administration, often disregarding local traditions and practices. This led to a complex and sometimes contentious relationship between the rulers and the ruled. The Russians brought railroads, factories, and a whole lot of social engineering. They aimed to modernize the region according to their own vision, building infrastructure and industries that would integrate Tajikistan more closely with the rest of the empire. They were basically trying to turn Tajikistan into a mini Russia, with varying degrees of success. The cultural and social changes were profound but not always welcomed by the local population. The Russian influence was pervasive, but the people of Tajikistan retained their own unique identity. But hey, at least they brought vodka, right? Amidst all the upheaval, some aspects of Russian culture, like their love for vodka, found a place in Tajik society. It was a small consolation in a time of great change and uncertainty. Section 5, From Soviet Republic to Civil War Chaos. Fast forward again to the 20th century, and the Russian Empire is out, replaced by the even bigger, even more powerful Soviet Union. This new superpower was a force to be reckoned with, stretching across Eurasia and imposing its ideology and control over a vast array of cultures and peoples. Tajikistan becomes a Soviet republic, which is kind of like being upgraded from a studio apartment to a slightly larger studio apartment in the same building. The Soviet Union brought with it a promise of modernization and development, but also a heavy hand of control. For a while things weren't so bad. The streets bustled with activity, and there was a sense of order and progress. People went about their daily lives adapting to the new regime and its demands. The Soviets invested in infrastructure, education, and of course propaganda. Schools were built, roads were paved, and the message of Soviet greatness was broadcast loud and clear. The aim was to integrate Tajikistan fully into the Soviet system, making it a model republic. But the price of progress was steep suppression of culture, religion, and any dissenting opinions. Traditional practices were discouraged and religious institutions were often targeted. The Soviet regime demanded loyalty and conformity, leaving little room for cultural expression. Then, in 1991, the Soviet Union imploded faster than a cheap tent in a hurricane. The once mighty superpower crumbled under its own weight, leading to a cascade of independence movements across its former territories. Tajikistan, along with its fellow Central Asian neighbors, was suddenly independent. The newfound freedom was exhilarating but also daunting. The country had to navigate the complexities of self-governance and build a new national identity from the ground up. It was like that moment you finally move out of your parents' basement, only to realize you have no idea how to pay bills or cook anything besides ramen noodles. The challenges of independence were immense, and the learning curve was steep. Independence was followed by a brutal civil war. The power vacuum left by the Soviet collapse led to fierce internal conflicts, as various factions vied for control. It was like everyone who had been holding their breath for 70 years finally exhaled, and it wasn't pretty. The civil war brought destruction and chaos, leaving deep scars on the nation and its people. Section 6, Modern Tajikistan Mountains, Migrants, and Moving On. So where does that leave Tajikistan today? Well, it's still figuring things out, like that friend who went through a messy breakup but is slowly getting their life back on track. The country is still grappling with poverty, corruption, and the legacy of its tumultuous past, but it's also a place of stunning natural beauty, warm hospitality, and a resilient spirit that's seen it through centuries of upheaval. Today, Tajikistan is a country in transition. It's trying to balance its ancient traditions with the demands of the 21st century. It's a land of contrasts, where snow-capped peaks overlook bustling cities, and ancient bazaars share space with modern shopping malls. Section 7. So you want to visit Tajikistan? Look, I get it. Tajikistan might not be your typical tourist destination. It's not exactly known for its all-inclusive resorts or Michelin-star restaurants, but if you're looking for an adventure, a chance to experience a culture vastly different from your own, and maybe try some delicious plav, look it up, a traditional dish, then Tajikistan might just surprise you in the best way. Just maybe pack a phrase book, a sense of humor, and a healthy tolerance for bureaucracy, and you'll be good to go.